Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Hi, I'm Joel Landy. Welcome to Songs of Freedom. It's a show that celebrates the dignity of human struggle with its many faces and its many voices. And I'm happy to be continuing a conversation we started last week with Faith Petric. Welcome back.
Well,
that didn't take too long now, did it?
No, it didn't.
Well, in our conversation before, we kind of got as far as the mid-1940s. In where you were and what was going on in this country in your life. Let's talk a little bit about the McCarthy years. Where were you and how did it affect you personally, and who did you know? What were some of the names surrounding you?
Oh dear, you wouldn't want me to name names to McCarthy. Oh no, can't do that. After my daughter was born, 1945, I did go right back to work. And I worked in public housing, and I worked for some time with what was known as the Joint Anti-Fascist Refugee Committee, which was raising money for the hospitals. It was in France. It was taking care of the people who were injured in Spain. And then, what did I do next? I decided to go back to school. I needed a master's degree, really, to get any kind of a job. So I went back. I was working on my master's when the loyalty oath came around. And I didn't sign it. And to this day, they owe me a very small amount of money, which I will never get, because I was just doing some little persnickety clerical job in one of the departments. But when I wouldn't sign the oath, they didn't give me my last check. Those were terrible times, the McCarthy area. As you know, people lost their jobs. I was president of our PTA then, where my daughter was going to school, and we fought that the teachers should not have to do that, because the minute you start getting rid of good teachers, the minute you start teaching this rote stuff, we didn't win, but we did try.
Did you face any repercussions for being the head of a PTA that was against that happening?
Well, the other people in the PTA treated us very badly. They were just, I went to one big district meeting where we had written a letter to them. And when the person running that particular, the chairperson, a woman, said, well, and here's another letter from the Frederick Burke PTA, and she rolled her eyes and sighed. I think they were scared of us in a way, because our PTA was for freedom of thought, or so on and so forth. You know, the schools have never really recovered, I don't think, because thinking people and creative people were weeded out by those McCarthy years. And you asked me, I think, something about the IWW, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Or how I got involved with that. My very first recollection of the IWW, I think I heard my father say something approvingly about it. This would have been clear back 1920s, 1925 maybe. Now, my father was no flaming red. As I said earlier, he was a preacher, a Methodist, ordained Methodist minister. And but when he spoke of it, it was with respect. He himself joined a union, and you know what? He made $1 an hour. Fantastic wages. Who could possibly be worth that much money in about 1925 along in there? I didn't actually join until I had been in the late 60s or early 70s. Utah Phillips was getting some people organized, and I just thought I would join also, much of it out of respect for the men who organized and fought for a good union. I think the founding conference that started the IWW was about 1905, with Elizabeth Gurley Fillion. And Mother Jones was there, but she never became a Wobbly herself. It was the first union that took in women, took in everybody regardless of race, creed, or color. The first union wanted everybody to belong to this one big union, which if today it would happen, if we were one union, I mean a general strike or something, you'd really have power. But now we have it fragmented, and unions don't respect each other's picket lines and fight against each other sometimes. But I still pay my dues. Mm-hmm. I'm not terribly active. I've played, you know, when they want someone to play for fundraising.
But I have a tape at home with you singing on it, an IWW tape.
Yeah, we made that. A bunch of us made that at a conference in Chicago at a IWW general meeting in Chicago quite some years ago. But you know, I carry those around with me, and I still sell quite a lot of them. It's now a CD as well as a tape. And I think what I'm singing on that is "You ain't done nothing if you ain't been called a red." So,
yep.
And Malvina Reynolds' Little Red Hen, probably the ones on that.
Right, the Little Red Hen.
But that still sells. That still sells after all these years. People like to hear those little wobbly songs. And you want to hear some of them? I don't
Sure.
know.
Why don't you sing any one you want?
Okay, let's see which one. Well, to begin with, maybe just think of a little wobbly song. Trying to think who wrote it, but it doesn't come to mind. Might have been, well, never mind who wrote it. It's probably T-Bone Slim, I think. I'm as mild-mannered man as can be, and I've never done them harm that I can see. Still on me they put a ban, and they throw me in the can. They go wild, simply wild over me. They accuse me of rascality, though I don't know why they always pick on me. I forgot the next two lines. They go wild, simply wild over me. First the cop, he went wild over me, and he held his gun where everyone could see. He's breathing rather hard when he saw my little red card. He went wild, simply wild over me. Then the jailer went wild over me, and he locked me up where everyone could see. Oh, I seem to be the rage, for they keep me in a cage. They go wild, simply wild over me. And the judge, he went wild over me, and I quickly saw we never could agree. So I let the man obey what his conscience had to say. He went wild, simply wild over me. Oh, they go wild, simply wild over me. I'm referring to the bedbug and the flea. They deserve my slumbers deep, and they rob me of my sleep. They go wild, simply wild over me. Will the roses grow wild over me when I'm gone into that land that is to be? When my soul and body part in the stillness of my heart, will the roses grow wild over me? What that brings to mind is that the Wobblies used old tunes. They used a lot of religious tunes. They used tunes that people knew and then wrote parodies to them. That was primarily, I think, what Joe Hill did, one of the most famous of the Wobbly singer-songwriters. And because the songs were so powerful is probably why he was, most of us think, framed and killed in Utah, in the state of Utah. He was accused of a murder and shot 1914, 15, I think it was September 1914 actually. I'm not positive because the music was so powerful.
Mm.
It's a
Faith,
singing.
let's fix your microphone.
Oh, is it falling
the
off
music,
again?
well, the thing is, we're talking about powerful music, and music can't hold this microphone. There you go.
The guitar, I think, messes it around to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So that made me think also, well, no, it comes ahead, the civil rights and the songs that they...
But tell me a little bit, that conference where this was made, there were a number of names there. You'd have a Utah Phillips story for me?
There was Utah, myself, and Brackney, and Mark Ross, I mean, not Mark Moss. There were quite a lot of, there were 13 or so members of the IWW who were actually at one of the big old Vancouver folk festivals. We had all our pictures taken together. And we all went to this conference with the idea, actually, of making this tape, it was then. There was some money that had been left to the IWW, and this was the way they decided to use it, was to make the recording of some of the songs, some of the old songs, and then some newish ones, like the Amen Called a Red or Magic Pain. Those are new songs. They aren't the old ones, but so it was a mix of Dump the Bosses Off Your Back, and
Right.
Some of the old songs, and some more current ones. But as I say, I don't feel that I've been particularly active because I've just got so much on my plate.
Right.
The other things I'm involved in, more in the folk music field.
Yeah.
So that.
Well, we could talk about now a little bit. What are some of your current involvements musically and cause-wise, or
Yeah.
what are you up to these days?
Well, I'm active with the San Francisco Folk Music Club, which is a non-political organization, because those of us who are in it don't feel we want the club necessarily to take a particular line to say they're for or against something, because all of us have other organizations.
That can be so divisive, you know.
Yeah, we express our politics and so on in other organizations which we belong. There's the Freedom Song Network, which I belong, which also meets at my house, as the Folk Music Club does. And we sing on picket lines, sing at demonstrations, sing good causes, help people raise money and so on. And then there's the People's Music Network, where we spent the past weekend getting together with friends and hearing some of their songs.
Yeah, for those of us who watch Songs of Freedom, you can't help but hear about the People's Music Network. That's where people, where I've gotten to meet people such as Faith and Pete Seeger and Charlie King and Pat Humphries, and these are people that mean something to me in my life, but their music is of a genre, and it's the kind of music that people who are involved with progressive politics enjoy, or a lot of us do. And we certainly invite more people to get involved with the People's Music Network. It was an inspiring weekend. It used to be my favorite part was getting my turn to perform in front of people, but my favorite part now is the Songs of the Spirit, which is something that we do on Sunday mornings. And this was a special Songs of the Spirit, and you sang the first song this year.
Yeah, how can I keep from singing? I also sang one of the last ones too, didn't I? How can I keep from singing when that first, I guess Pete kind of made it popular, and 2 or 3 records came out that year called How Can I Keep From Singing? So that, I think that must have been around 1960s, something, 65. Actually, what I did, the way I got more completely involved with folk music, and I do a column and sing out, that gets me involved, and I started a newsletter in our folk music club way back in the early 60s, and I'm edited for more years than I care to remember. Fortunately, I don't have to do that anymore, but I'm still very involved in it. We put songs in it and the news of the club and things, and that takes up a certain amount of time.
Your column for Sing Out, you've given a lot of young songwriters and a lot of songwriters a chance to be seen in print. I know, I was one of them. I sent you it was Take Me Out to the Law Game. It's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're in.
Yeah.
That was a few years back.
Good one.
But any particular parodies stick out in your mind that you want to share with us today?
Well, gosh, I'm still thinking of Wobbly songs. Why not a Joe Hill one? That would
sounds good to me.
That would be good. I've got a little note here that gives me a key, I think. Well, we could do Joe Hill himself, and then maybe do a couple of his songs.
Great.
Now this one isn't an old song again. It's written by, oh dear, it was written at a camp, a kids' camp one time. And I'm forgetting the name of the Hayes, and Earl Robinson wrote the music. And Hayes wrote this. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. The copper bosses killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I didn't die, says Joe. I didn't die. In Salt Lake, Joe, by God, says I, am standing by my bed. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Joe Hill ain't dead, he says to me. Joe Hill ain't never died. Where workers strike and organize, Joe Hill is at their side. Joe Hill is at their side. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where common men defend their rights, says he, you'll find Joe Hill. That's where you'll find Joe Hill. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. But speaking of parodies, I saw Anita Hill last night, alive upon TV. Says I, but dear, that's 10 years old. I never lied, says she. I never lied, says she. The Senate bosses framed you, dear. They shamed you, dear. They said I. Takes more than that to kill the truth, says she. I didn't lie, says she. I didn't lie. The good old boys, they had a ball with pubic hair and coke. They said you had a fantasy, said she. That's how he spoke, says she. That's how he spoke. Anita Hill ain't gone, she says. Anita Hill won't quit. Where women stand up for their rights, I'll be a part of it. I'll be a part of it. From San Diego up to Maine, in office, job, and mill, where women stand up for their rights, you'll find Anita Hill. You'll find Anita Hill.
That was wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Songs of Freedom. My name is Joel Landy, and I'm here with Faith Petric. How long have you been doing that column for Sing Out now?
Oh, quite a while now. Goodness. I don't know, really. 10 years, more or
Wow.
less. I don't pay attention to that sort of thing, I guess.
That's quite some time. What were you doing during the 60s?
Well, let's see. I'm getting confused when I was 60s or during the 60s.
Okay.
When during the 60s, mostly, that's when I got my master's in the early 60s, and I went to work for the government. The job, the state of California disability, people taking care of people with disabilities. And I stayed with them until I quit work, which is in 1970. I was 55 years old. I'd gotten my daughter through college. And I thought, well, it's my turn. And I had no idea what I was going to do, really. I just going to take some time. And I knew if I wanted to go back to work that I could in a couple of years. So I stopped working, and the thing that got me started being a traveling folkian performer, first thing I did was go around the world. You remember I started out to go around the world in 1939, and I got sidetracked. War came along, and I had a child. 35 years later, I went around the world. And it's something everybody should do. I think they should send kids around the world instead of sending them to high school.
Or to war.
Or certainly or to war. Because the cultures that are, you're born and raised up in this country and you think the world is like this. And of course you couldn't be wronger. Very little
Sort of like
of
a
the
revelation
world.
you told me that happened to you in the first conversation we had. It's like they've been lying to you.
Yeah. Yep, they're lying to you. And to go and see some other cultures. And I don't mean just Europe, because Europe is pretty much on the same trip. But get into the Middle East, get into India, go to a lot of different places.
You know,
It's a good education.
It might be possible that some people aren't ready for that.
Well, that's true. Maybe high school is too young, but high schools as they are is a disaster or worse. They certainly don't meet the needs of the young people.
So,
And
so
they're
here it is, 1970. You say it's my turn. So you're saying that, and we talked about this before, and it's an inspiration to me, Faith. I want you to know this. Over the past year, I've come to realize that I am not doing this full time with my life, and I have to. And it took me a while for me to be okay with that. You know, I have the day job, and I make music because, and I have the show because I like to do this, and I enjoy speaking to Faith Petric and people like yourself. But you said that, you know, when you stop work, the fun begins.
Well, you work a lot harder than you did before, but you're doing something you want to do.
Right.
It's your thing. I had no plan to be a folky performer or traveling, but a bunch of us got an old school bus, and we called ourselves the Portable Folk Festival. We went across the United States playing in parking lots, and we did have some gigs. We played at a couple of festivals. We played for a number of folk clubs, and it was at Fox Hollow, I think, one of the old great festivals. I would say I got bit by the bug. I'd see a microphone and my attitude was, get out of the way, that's mine. I really got bit by the bug. I loved the traveling and I loved performing. And it wasn't like I was, as I say, I wasn't going to, I'm going to go be a folkie. Just the channels of my life kind of flowed into that stream. It met a lot of my needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've done ever since, is continue to be involved in folk music activities. I don't perform as much as I used to. After all, you take, well, this is 2000, and I was born in 1915, right? Well, I'm 84 years and a half. I'm almost 85, and I've slowed down, and some people look at me and say, yeah, but I know that I'm not doing as much as I used to, but I still travel a lot. I had a wonderful tour in Australia a couple of years ago.
Really?
Oh, God.
That's someplace I'd like to go very
Two
much.
and a half months of playing at festivals and things, and it was a real treat.
So do they know who Faith Petric is down in Australia?
Well, they do now.
They do now. I remember I was in Washington 2 summers ago, and I go to the Oregon Country Fair. I'm with friends. We're going to have a ball, and that is a party and a half.
Oh, it
that
is
fair.
indeed.
And there I'm sitting down, like taking a load off, enjoying myself. And then I see you walk out. I was like, I had no idea that this was going to happen.
Yeah, I've played the Oregon Country Fair for, oh goodness, 18 years probably. Also, then I go traveling with a group of people, many of whom also play at the fair, a group called Chautauqua. And we're a variety show, really. And we play little towns that don't have any live theater. And the towns do help us, the arts, but by and large, we raise the money. We go and do this, we don't get paid. And it started kind of by flying Karamazovs and a couple of 3 people like that. And we still go.
Is one of the reasons that you go is because you come from such a small town? There might not have been theater back in those days.
Well, there certainly wasn't any in the little towns that I lived in. A couple of the little towns I lived in literally do not exist anymore. You drive by and there's nothing there anymore. Peck, Idaho, or Thornton, Washington. The town's gone. The freeways went through, and the farms that kept them alive became agribusiness.
Things just disappear.
Totally disappeared, yes.
You have a song about that?
Oh, Lordy, let me think. I do. I have, as a matter of fact, that's where I went to Capo. This is a new song. It was written by a woman named Kate Long. And sometimes more than one song has done this to me. A couple of Jean Ritchie's, I learned them and I couldn't sing them in public because it made me cry. And this almost has that effect because it takes me back to when I was 5 years old and the farms were going then. That was 1920, Big Depression. And the Wobblies were wiped out by the Pinkertons in that same 1918, 1920. everything gets auctioned off. The bank forecloses. And we went to one of those auctions. And I still remember it, and I was really just about exactly 5 years old. Because there were fruit jars, and he said if nobody bid on them, he was going to break them. And I was so appalled by that as a child, because we did subsistence farming. If you didn't grow it and if you didn't can it, you didn't have it. There weren't any farms. There weren't stores. I mean, there weren't stores. You couldn't just go somewhere and buy stuff. I can remember my mother counting the number of cans and wondering if it would last until the crops came in, until the gardens were ready again. Would she have enough beans canned and fruit canned? And here this man was going to break those jars. And I'm sure it was just a threat. He didn't. It was just some way to get, but this song, get back to the
Ladies
song.
and gentlemen, this is Faith Petric. I'm Joel Landy, and you're watching Songs of Freedom. Good night.
Leaves are falling and turning in showers of gold as the postman climbs up our long hill, and there's sympathy written all over his face as he hands me a couple more bills. Who will watch the home place? Who will tend my heart's dear space? Who will fill my empty place when I am gone from here? There's a cozy green nook by a clear running stream. It was my place when I was quite small, and its creatures and sounds would soothe my worst fears, but today they don't ease me at all. Who will watch the home place? Who will tend my heart's dear space? Who will fill my empty place when I am gone from here? In my grandfather's shed there are hundreds of tools. I know them by feel and by name. Like parts of my body, they've patched this old place. When I move them, they won't be the same. Who will watch the home place? Who will tend my heart's dear space? Who will fill my empty place when I'm gone from here? Now I wander around, touching each blessed thing, the chimney, the table, the tree, and my thoughts swirl around me like birds on the wing. When I leave here, oh, who will I be? Who will watch the home place? Who will tend my heart's dear space? Who will fill my empty place when I'm gone from here?
Now, when was the first time you said you heard that one?
Well, I learned that within the last few years, but it describes, you see, what's happened and what's happening terribly all over this country today as agribusiness buys up all the little farms and the farmers. And
We're almost out of time.
I know.
Right.
It happens, doesn't it?
Fastest 29 minutes of my life. Ladies and gentlemen, for Songs of Freedom, this is Faith Petric. I'm Joel Landy. Good night. So what's next for Faith?